I grew up during the 1970s. It was a very violent time. And Southie was a very different place than it is now. And I was basically, as a child, I was bathed in violence, you know, right from birth. Tremendous amount of racism, tremendous amount of addiction, anger, hatred. It was a very tough place to live. I've always been an outcast in the neighborhood. I was always an outcast. It always felt, there was something inside that felt off. You know, I could never understand why things were transpiring the way they were, why there was so much hatred, why there was hatred sent towards South Boston and why there was hatred sent from South Boston. You know, I looked at it from both ends. I looked at the hatred coming and the hatred going. And even as a child, I questioned it. When the violence really started, it was about when I was 10 years old. What happened was I was actually picked as the representative of South Boston. During the 70s, they wanted to remake Boston and make it more of a unity type of place, you know, with people working together. So they had an idea to take a person from South Boston, a person from Roxbury, a person from Chinatown, and a woman from Brighton, and a girl from Brighton, and they all put us together, and we went down to the New England Aquarium to break ground, kind of breaking ground, new unity kind of feeling, new Boston, breaking ground. And what happened after that basically was setting my life on a completely different direction, because that's when everything kind of fell apart. Because I did something that was outrageous at the time, and that was take a picture holding the hands of a black boy. Now that went over the Boston papers. So when that happened, I really became the outsider. I didn't know there'd be repercussions. I made a friend. You know, I mean, when you're a kid, you know, the old sayings come to me with the mind of a child. When you're a kid, you have friends. You don't have a Chinese friend or a black friend or a polka dotted friend. You have a friend. So I made a friend. So they said, everybody held hands, and I held hands with my friend. And then after that, when it came out to the news, I won't use the terms that I was called, but I was called a lot of terms. And then that's when the violence really started to occur. But let's just say I went down and I went to get an ice cream cone. So I would walk down the street and go get an ice cream cone, and I don't feel comfortable using the terms, but I'll just say, hey, there's the blank lover, which would be followed up with bottles being thrown at me. Usually, you know, on a good day it would be bottles just thrown at me. On a regular day it would be 2 or 3 kids coming at me, jumping, swinging bats, hitting, you know, a couple of occasions being stabbed with broken bottles. At first it was an overwhelming sensation of depression and sadness, obviously, because I was still trying to process why people were like that. Why was this going on, you know? As it became a norm, you become bathed in it. You know, it's like you're living like a gospel of violence. You know, you go out and, okay, here's what it is, and this is what I expect to do on a daily basis. But as I started to get older, I started to question the why. The word why, you know, that magical word that everyone seeks. You know, all the sages look at it, the big why. Why is this happening? You know, because I held hands with somebody and I'm like have to fight to go get a soda? I had a small little teeny black and white television, and I saw this little television show called Kung Fu. And I saw this man fighting against the evildoers, but they went to these things, these temples, and I looked at that and something inside just clicked. Call it a second sense, call it a destiny calling, and I said, I have to find out more about this. So what I did was I went to my very first martial arts school. I was 12 and a half, I believe, at the time. And I was exposed to a new philosophy in life. At first I looked at that and I said, well, this ignorance isn't going away. And while I could handle myself, I didn't have the skill to fight off. I mean, you just did the best you can when those people are kicking, punching, throwing garbage cans at you, and you know. But I looked at that and I said, well, this guy is tossing 150 people through the air on TV. I want to learn that because I'd like to get out on the street and not be beat up, you know. So I initially started just for the self-defense, aspects. What that did for me was it opened up avenues where I realized that learning how to defend yourself is learning how to alter the violence inside of you, not outside. So I looked at that and it sent me down a completely different pathway. You don't have to be from Boston. You don't have to be from Chicago. You don't have to be from Compton. We all share the same common experience. I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be there. I know what it's like to be stabbed. I know what it's like to be beat on. I know what it's like to be hopeless. And what I would tell that person who sits there, that finds this interview, that you don't have to engage what people say about you. You don't have to believe what people say about you. You do not have to believe what they say. There is a power within every single person. If you want to call it a light, if you want to call it divinity, if you want to call it chi, prana, mana, any of the words, there is a power that is waiting for the person to realize that they do not have to become what someone expects them to become. To condense it down, I would say, don't believe what anyone else says, believe in yourself.